Hi. This is going to be kind of a critique of the movie Unthinkable, starring Samuel Jackson. And I forgot who the other stars are, but hold on and I will tell you. Gil Bellows, I've never heard that name before. Brandon Ruth, or Ralph, I'm not sure who that is. Martin Donovan, I don't know who that is. Michael Sheen, I assume that's from the dynasty of the Sheen family. Carrie Ann Moss, she should be top billed because she is the protagonist in this film. And Samuel L. Jackson is, he's kind of like a protagonist, antagonist, or an anti-hero. Gil Bellows, I'm guessing he must be the antagonist. So if you have not watched the film Unthinkable, I highly recommend that you go ahead and watch it before watching this, because I'm going to be talking freely about it. I don't care if you've not seen it before. So I'm going to be exposing what happens in it and just spoiling it for anybody who hasn't watched it. Not that that's my intention. It's my intention to talk about it, not to spoil it. So watch it first. So the story starts with the antagonist, Mr. Younger, who also goes by the Muslim name of Yusuf somebody. Actually, both of his names are kind of confusing. So we'll just call him Mr. Younger, because I can't even remember what his first name is. So he is a character, or not a character, but a person that I've seen in movies before. He does a pretty good job in this film. In fact, I would say that Carrie Ann Moss did a really good job. Gil Bellows did a really good job. A lot of the other people were just kind of more wallpaper than critical. But in general, the performance of most of the people in the film that made a difference did a good job. Like the wife of Younger, who's a Muslim woman, she did a good job. The kids that they had in there, I didn't really feel like they did a good job. The girl did a better job than the boy, I think. But they were pretty darn young, and they had a very minor role throughout the film. I think the children of Samuel's character did a better job, and they were probably around the same age, maybe a little bit older, but I'm not sure. The wife of Samuel L. Jackson's character, and I forgot his name, gosh darn it. H. He goes by H. That's what it is. I thought that she did a good job, but I think that she, in the scene where she talks about what happened to her family in Bosnia, she underplayed it, I feel. Given that later H reveals, okay, so Carrie Ann Moss goes outside because she's angry at H because his job is to torture Younger, or Yusuf. And so she's really upset because H had given her a box and said, she said she was going to go in there. And I'm kind of skipping. I'm going to skip around. So that'll be a little bit confusing for you if you haven't seen the movie yet. So she said H comes out. He says his wife is there, so he's going to go eat a meal with her. So he comes out, and Moss, whose name is I think her name is Brody. Last name is Brody. That's how they refer to her. She says, "Oh, I'm going to go in there and talk to him." And then H says to her, "No, wait 10 minutes. He'll start crying. Then go in. But if he falls asleep," and he gives her this little box with a button on it, she says, "Push this button and it will wake him up, and because it'll electrify him, and you're the only one who's allowed to use it. Nobody else is authorized to use that." He makes that point of pointing to everybody else in the room. So he steps out to go eat with his wife outside. And this is kind of odd, because in the beginning, when they first go to this abandoned, what I believe is a school, they're told this is top secret. Nobody can know about this place. This place doesn't even exist. We are not here. We do not exist, and blah, blah, blah. but we repeatedly see that being violated. H's character violates it when he has his wife brought in. Um, Brody's character has it violated somehow, and then somehow, and I don't really remember how it happened, but the wife of Yusuf, she suddenly is in the building, even though she's not supposed to be there or know where it is, demanding her children back. And it's just, I don't know, maybe I wasn't quite paying attention enough at that point in time, but I was just kind of like, what? Huh? How did she find the place that's not fine? It's just like, ah! So it's a little bit confusing, but that's probably my fault. So anyways, he goes outside, and they notice that Yusuf who's been tortured repeatedly by that point, has had his fingernails ripped out, has been cut up, has been shocked, and so on and so forth. They notice he has fallen asleep, and they don't want him to fall asleep because they don't want him to have rest, because part of what they're doing is psychological torture to destabilize him mentally. Preventing him from sleeping can cause him to go into a state of psychosis, which to me just sounds stupid, but I'm not a terrorist. And anybody who engages in torture in my mind is a terrorist of a different sort. So one of the other characters, who is a colonel, who's supposed to be, there was a general, but the general refused to be there anymore, and he put the colonel in charge. The colonel wanted to leave also, but he was not allowed permission to leave. So he's put in this position where he's having to break the law on behalf of the CIA, who's there's a high-ranking member of the CIA that's authorizing what's going on, and he's in the room at all times, making sure that everything's getting done. But he's otherwise kind of like just this superficial character, except for very, very brief times where he actually speaks. So the colonel tells Brody to push the button to wake him up, and she refuses. So he grabs it and he pushes the button. And so immediately Yusuf is jerking around, and they start freaking out because suddenly they think it's going to be like just a jolt to wake him up. But it's not. It's going on and on and on, and they realize he's probably going to die if they don't stop it. So they go in there and they rip things apart until they finally get it to stop. And then Brody is so angry, she walks outside to where H is having lunch with his wife, and you can tell from his performance that he really knows what he's doing, but he doesn't necessarily like it. But he's also extremely smart. He's also very cocky, and I think that in some ways he did a good job on his performance, but in other ways I felt like his performance was lacking. I'd love to hear what you think about that. And it has nothing to do with his skin color or anything. I think I really enjoy Jackson's performance in many of the films that he's been in, but in this one I felt like his performance was not up to his usual standard. So she goes out there and she calls him a bastard. Now I'm not breaking YouTube rules here. I am quoting from the movie. So YouTube, that's for you. Oh, darn it. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, well. Yeah, so he says, not in front of my kids, because they're doing like a voice chat with his kids, or no, like a Snapchat or whatever, some kind of a video chat. But you don't hear them or anything like that, really. You don't see the screen. So he closes his camera. He says goodbye to the kids and closes his computer. And they're sitting there eating. He's kind of lying on his side next to his wife and eating this kind of nice-looking salad. And so she starts confronting him about the thing. And he said that the electrocution would have only gone on for X number of minutes or whatever it was. And she said, he could have died. He wasn't going to die. And so she's really angry at him. Now, the funny thing is she is supposed to be in this movie the one who represents the good in us. But what you see throughout the movie is the slow erosion of her moral character to the point where She starts to torture the Yusuf at one point, but she stops and she is just like in shock after she just like cut him with a scalpel a bit, and she was just shocked at herself because when she calmed down, well, she and she walks away and somebody has to take the knife from her because she's not even conscious that she's holding it, but she's really very, very self-righteous about the fact that they're torturing this guy. Now, you have to keep in mind that this guy has stated that there are 3 nuclear bombs placed around the country. He has given pictures of the bomb, of each bomb, in a location, and not stated, of course, where the bomb is. He said, I will tell you where they are when you meet my demands. But he withholds his demands, and he deliberately gets himself captured because he knows what he wants to prove his point. And his point is that the American government kills dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of people every day around the world. And he used to be in a black ops organization that would fight terrorism. And he just eventually he woke up to the fact that America engages in terrorism constantly. And that's factual. This is not fictional. This is actual fact. If you look at the history of America's activities, America has toppled governments, assassinated or imprisoned leaders of nations, incited riots, and bombed and done all kinds of things all over the world, all in the name of America's freedom. Not freedom, and not even freedom of American people per se, but actually supporting the desires of the ultra wealthy. And that's one of the underlying mostly unspoken themes in this movie, is that America is really run by the ultra rich elitists who don't care about anything other than their wealth and power. And they wield it in many different ways, mostly through the government, also through police, through the FBI, through a lot of different ways as well. Manipulation of the stock market, manipulation of the economy. There have been incidences where ultra rich people have toppled through economic means, through stock market manipulation and so on, toppled governments, caused them to go bankrupt. And that has been an ongoing problem for hundreds of years now. I mean, we're talking about well before the Rothschild family was doing that. There were other people that were doing the exact same thing. So anyways, getting back to the confrontation, he, after he explains it, that the thing was only going to electrocute this Yusuf guy for a while. He doesn't even finish his food, which I thought was really strange because he's like been going at it nonstop. He's not eating right. He's popping pills regularly, although it's weird because you see him regularly popping pills. But there's this one point very late in the movie where he, I believe it was after he came very close to torturing Yusuf's children, that he's in the bathroom and he's got the pill bottle open and it's almost entirely full. So based on the size of the pills that you can see in that bottle, he either got a refill or they forgot to make sure there was enough taken out of the pill bottle. But in any event, so he abandons his salad, which is just inexplicable to me, and goes back inside. And so she starts to walk back, and then or something like that, and then the wife, whose name I forgot, she doesn't start walking back. She starts talking to the wife, and the wife tells her, do you know what happened to me? Because she's asking, how can you be with H? He's such a horrible human being, blah, 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 blah. Because his job is torturing people. He works for the CIA, although at one point he does state that he is there against his will, that he has been forced into engaging in this torture of Yusuf. But he has a history from when he was in Black Ops of being a torturer. So she says, do you know what happened to me when I was living in Bosnia with my first family? 3 men came in and they killed my husband and my children one by one in front of me. And they raped me. They were my neighbors, people I knew well. So don't talk to me about, my husband not being a good man, because he's good. He's great to me, and he's great to our children. So, it's really kind of turns the tables on your perception of what's going on and what good and bad really are. And you can't really find solid ground, morally speaking, with anybody in the movie. For everybody, some people you just can dismiss them as, well, they're minor characters and they're not doing anything bad. So those are okay, because they're like the FBI guys that are underneath Brody, and they cannot get involved. So they're like in a separate room. They're just trying to figure out where the bombs are. So they're really kind of the only solid ground you get, and you don't see them most of the time, except for in the beginning of the movie, when that sets the stage for her role as one of the leaders in the FBI and her office. Not the leader, but one of the leaders. And her boss really fades into the background after they get to this black site, this former school or whatever. So it's, except for people like that, people who are very peripheral, it's very hard with the main characters and the supporting characters of the main characters that are consistently around to look at any of them and say, wow, that person's really good. Now, some of them you can say that person's definitely bad, but then you have to look at the context. And the context is this man has set up 4 bombs in America, but only told them about 3 bombs. He has not admitted that there are 4. And H knows there are 4 because he's done the math. Because early on, they talk about the fact that there are 16 to 18 kilos or whatever it is of nuclear material that have been stolen. But there are only 3 bombs, and in each bomb, it specifically says at one point in the movie, if you're really paying attention, somebody is reviewing the footage that Yusuf sent in about the bombs, and he shows all sides of the bombs, and he says there's 1.5 kilos here, 1.5 kilos here, and 1.5 kilos here within one bomb. So that's 4.5. So if you do the math, you're talking about 4, 8, 12, 13.5 kilos. Well, where's the rest of it? Where's the other 4.5? It's not talked about until almost really pretty much the end, when H says, oh, by the way, there's a 4th bomb. And what are you talking about? There's no 4th bomb. You only talked about 3 bombs. Yeah, but it was reported 16 to 18 kilos. So where's the missing 4.5? There's another bomb that he has not told us about. Now, this is at the point in the movie at the end where Yusuf has been tortured to the point his wife, H slashes the throat of his wife. H almost tortures his children. And at the point where he's seeing his children in a darkened room with H, and he's starting to bind them, that he gives the addresses of the 3 bombs, but he doesn't say anything about the 4th bomb. So if H knew all along, or at some point earlier in the movie, that there was a 4th bomb, why would he not tell them that? There's absolutely no reason. This is one of several examples in this film where they do things that don't make sense. Okay, it's just, it really irritated me. So another thing, so getting back to what I was talking about. So on one hand, we find H to be very despicable, because here he is torturing man. He and his partner, his assistant, I forgot what his name is. He's a Hispanic guy. It starts with an A, Alvarez or whatever, I forgot. They have waterboarded this guy. They have cut him. They have electrocuted him. They have beaten him, and they have pulled his fingernails off. They've cut off parts of his fingers. And even before the CIA had a military soldier in there torturing the guy with sleep deprivation and cold water being sprayed on him constantly, so his blood, his temperature of his body, it goes kind of hypothermic and all that kind of stuff. And they've been doing this for a while. Even when it's being reported that this guy is being sought, he's already been caught. On the news, I mean, he's already been caught, and they were already in the process of torturing him, even though the news is reporting they're still looking for him, because the government is not going to say they've caught the guy that they're now torturing, because it's illegal. Of course, if you look at American history is full of actions where the CIA, the FBI, and other law enforcement agencies have actually tortured, murdered, kidnapped, and so on, such as MK Ultra or the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, and so on and so forth, and also what Hoover did to the blacks in the 60s and 70s, and maybe even into the 80s, I'm not sure, as the head of the FBI. So yeah, it's like quicksand watching this movie. You're never able to really solidly identify with somebody as being moral, because even the people who start out in the movie as being very moral, the stress, because these bombs could take out up to 10 million people. Well, the 3 that they know about. They don't know where the 4th one is, and they're guessing because they don't know which cities they should be looking in. Now, one of the things that really kind of irked me about this movie is that early on, when they go to the black site, they are told, this place does not exist. We are not here. You have not seen or done anything. It's all, just don't think about it. Don't talk about it. That kind of stuff, And so Brody is being instructed. So she's told, your top priority is to find the bombs. However, most of the time, she's doing another priority. You also have to witness the torture, because later we're going to get these bastards. That's her boss from the FBI saying that. And he's generally not in the room where the torture is occurring. So she's got 2 priorities. But then you have to interrogate the terrorist. So that's 3 priorities. And don't forget now, you also have to go to the site where the bomb is, because eventually she thinks he's cracked, because she goes in after H has been torturing him, and she's talking about his family, and he starts crying and saying, okay, there are no bombs. I lied. It's not true. And she says, well, give me some proof. I need some proof. So he says, you don't need proof. You don't want proof. And she's like, she kept on insisting. And I knew what was going to happen. It was obvious when they start going back and forth about proof. Even before he says there are no bombs, I knew there was a bomb. And the reason it was just overplayed, because it was clear there was a reticence on his part to take this next step, because he knew innocent lives were going to be lost. So finally, he tells her where to go. And they get there, and they find a large room, and there's this wooden panel that was shown with a bomb in one part of the room. But that area hasn't been swept yet for like triggers or anything like that would cause the bomb to explode. So they are about to, they call the soldiers, because for some reason there's a whole bunch of soldiers with them. The soldiers start rushing into the room, and she says, wait. And because she doesn't want them to step on a trigger, right? So they've taken a bunch of Yahoo soldiers who don't know squat about finding and defusing a bomb and sent them in to a bomb area. That doesn't make sense. You don't send people who don't understand how to search for bombs and tripwires and other kinds of triggers into an area where those things probably exist. It doesn't make sense, at least not to me. So then they cut from that scene to them being up on top, and there is this like small, like maybe a fuse box or maybe a power switch box, one of those gray boxes that has the rounded lid on it that you flip upward, and there's a picture of Yusuf on it. They didn't put it there. It was there. They found it there. But they just cursorily show it. And they're all kind of looking around trying to figure out, well, what do we do now? We haven't found the bomb. And he sent us here for some reason. So is it because there's no bomb in the location of the picture? Or what's going on? And then suddenly this higher ranking soldier comes up, sees the picture of Yusuf, and before Brody can tell him to stop, he rips that picture off. What's this? And rips it off. And beneath or behind that picture is a switch. As soon as the contact or the pressure of the picture is removed from that switch or button or whatever it was, a bomb goes off like 3-4 blocks away, and it's a big explosion. Several kilos of maybe C4 or something like that were used. 53 people die as a result. And so, again, you don't send Yahoo soldiers who don't know what they're, how to case a situation like this into this kind of a situation. You get bomb disposal experts to do that, and they're supported by, but not authorized to lead in any way to find that bomb and to support and protect the people who are going to defuse the bomb. So it really irked me because Brody didn't need to be there. There was no real reason for her to be there. She still needed to find the other bombs. And of course, her team that was working on that for her, because most of the time she was in the room that we see in the movie, because there's a lot of time missing from the movie, of course. But so we see her like 2-3 times, I think, in the movie where she's actually with her team that is looking, and they're looking for the bomb information. But what they're doing, it's so rudimentary that I'm like, really? That's what you're doing? You're starting from there? You're never going to find the bombs in time if you're starting from there. It was like, my God, they've assigned a bunch of idiots to this case because it's just another part of the script that really irked me. Putting if you're going to assign people to a bomb case, you get people who are bomb experts. You don't bring in a team that doesn't know what they're doing. And when they get into the black site, another thing that irked me was they were told that a lot more people from the FBI, her boss tells her, a lot more people from the FBI are going to be sent in to help look for the bombs. There never are. It's just that core team that is doing the work. You never see more FBI agents. So that doesn't materialize. And you can argue whatever you want to argue about it. But the fact of the matter is, it should have been a team of specialists, not these generalist FBI agents who are not trained in how to find something or figure something out like this. And starting from such a basic point that you see halfway through the movie that they're doing, hours or maybe a day after they were put into this bomb, this black site. So it just really frustrated me to see all of these weaknesses in the script. Setting all these errors and inconsistencies and insufficiencies aside, I think the tactic of making the moral ground shift, because if you look at micro versus macro, up to 10 million people could die. Micro, you're torturing somebody. So where do your morals stand? This is like an exaggerated form of the train question. I forgot. There's a special name for it, but the train question goes like this: you're near the train tracks, and you have found one of those switches where you move the tracks from one line to another line, and you see that the tracks are pointed in this direction, and down that direction there are several people on the track that are stuck. They're like tied down or something like that. And there's a train coming from that way. Now, you can't get to them in time to save them. Yelling isn't going to do any good because nobody's going to be able to untie them in time. So the opportunity to switch the track. But then you see there's one person on that track who also can't be rescued in time to prevent them from being killed because they're like drunk, or maybe they're like stuck in their car, or otherwise they're unaware of what's going on. So do you kill one person to save the four people, or do you just let it happen, and then you're like, I didn't do anything, I didn't know what to do, so I couldn't choose. Couldn't choose to kill one person or four people. Who's better? Who deserves to be saved? I don't know. So a lot of people, when asked that question, and there are many variations of this question, a lot of people will say either that they won't do anything and just let it take its course, or they will well, yeah, that's generally it. And there are variations where you actually have to sacrifice a person's life in a different way to save, like you're up on a bridge and there's a guy standing next to the rails over the switch. And if you push this guy over, he'll hit the switch and the switch will divert so that the train misses the people on the track. And that's even worse because now you have to choose to actually commit murder or severe damage to that person in order to save those people down the track. So a psychopath, supposedly, will always choose the lesser evil to save the larger group because they're thinking clearly. They're not being emotional about it. This is one of the... if you can stay calm and you can stomach the idea that your action will potentially hurt or kill somebody, but you'll save a bunch of other lives, you'll make the best choice. But if you don't do anything, you will live with the fact that you allowed a group of people to die when you could have saved them. And that's the whole concept. And this movie expands that from 1 versus 4 to 1 versus 10 million, plus the fourth bomb that we don't know about. So it really distracts from the inadequacies of the script and keeps you really waffling about, well, what do we do? I mean, I don't want to torture anybody, but at the same time, I don't want anybody to die, and this guy is not being cooperative. And so after that bomb goes off, they go back, and she's pissed off at him, and she grabs a knife, and she jabs it a bit into his chest, and that's when she gets, she realizes what she's doing. Here's the woman who consistently has protested the torture, and now she's torturing him. Brody does that, and that's when she walks away looking very, very shocked and kind of, shocked. Yeah, that's the right word for it. And one of the military guys, most of the military people, aside from the colonel, were cleared from the site. And it's weird because the general and the CIA guy that outrules the general, overrules, they have said, everybody that's military out. But after they've done that, these two low-level soldiers, don't leave with all of the other military guys. And one of them is told to stay, the black guy. So here's another bald black guy. I don't know what the point of that was. I kind of, in one sense, I'm kind of irritated by it because we have the torturer is a black guy being assisted by a Hispanic guy. And a soldier that's told to remain is also a black guy. But I'm not sure, are we supposed to look at this black guy who's really just a bystander and seems to be a nice guy? Is he supposed to be counterpoint to those two torturers who are not white? Or is he bad too somehow? So it kind of gives me a bad taste in my mouth that both of the torturers and the military torturer, who actually Samuel's character H beats the crap out of him when he first goes in there. He's white, I believe, but I'm not quite sure because you don't get a good look at his face until after he's been beaten by H, and then it's part of his face is swollen up. But it's just a little bit of a point that kind of irritates me. But what really irritates me is that all of these military people are ordered by a general to get out, and yet two of them are just standing there, and one of them gets chosen to stay, and then mysteriously another one, the other guy that was supposed to leave, is still there sometimes, and on top of that, sometimes the first torturer, who was doing it the CIA way with waterboarding and cold water and lights and no sleep, that was beaten by H, sometimes he's there too. So it's like, would you make up your mind? There's been a direct order from a general, and you're still here? That doesn't even make any sense at all. So it just, it's just like, I don't know, carelessness on the part of the director, I guess, or maybe the scriptwriter. Thinking about it, I guess I'm going to say that black soldier, thinking about his very minor role and the fact that he doesn't really do anything bad other than being a bystander at a torture site, we can argue that he's relatively portrayed as a good guy in the sense that he's not torturing the victim. I mean, not victim, but Yusuf. So, I guess, okay. And to be frank, most of the people that you see at this site are Caucasians, the vast majority. And that's representative of the American population, really. I mean, what is it, like 8% of the American population is black, and then something like, oh my God, I forgot, 4% or 6% are Hispanic or Latino. So it's fairly representative. And even after most of the soldiers are ordered to leave, there are only those three people who are not white. I mean, Yusuf is a white guy. He's American. He was in the military. He was in Black Ops, and he's really protesting what America does to other countries, to innocent people all over the world, all the time. And he eventually he makes that clear. He doesn't make it clear immediately, but he lets things out little by little. He's like really, the character is really mentally prepared and has committed himself fully to his course of action. And you find that out, that, I mean, even though they're torturing him, he went in and let himself be captured at a mall, standing in front of a security camera until the police came, or the FBI came, whatever it was, knowing full well that they were probably going to torture him because, he used to be Black Ops. So he understands that. And so it is, you start to see that, whereas in the beginning, and I admit this irked me at the beginning, that this Muslim white guy was being portrayed as a terrorist. But as we go through the movie, we start to see that in actuality, he's protesting American terrorism. He's not actually a terrorist in the sense that here's another Muslim trying to destroy America. He is protesting what America does all over the world to innocent people, and yet works with dictators, funds the enemy of their enemy, like Pol Pot, and the people in Afghanistan that ended up the Taliban, that ended up being America's enemy, and Al Qaeda that ended up being America's enemy, and so on and so forth. I mean, America has a very, very black history in terms of nationally and internationally, if you really look into it and don't blind yourself with patriotism. Anyways, so you see more and more and more that he is holding the high ground, and H is holding the high ground too, because he would rather torture one person and kill his wife and torture his children to save 10 million people than to let 10 million people die. And plus, he knows about the fourth bomb, and he's the only one, because nobody else has figured it out somehow, which doesn't really make sense to me, because they even discuss, before going to the black site, I think it is, they even discuss the fact that it's 16 to 18 kilos that are missing. So somebody else should have been like, 13.5, where's the rest of it? But they don't discuss that possibility until the end of the movie. So yeah, so they eventually he gets the addresses. He gives the addresses of 3 of the sites, and so Brody says to H, he says, "We got the information," and so H says, "Well, how long is it going to take to confirm the addresses?" And Brody says, 20 minutes. He says, "Oh, that's 20 minutes I have with these children to torture them in front of their dad, just to make sure." And that's when a bunch of people in the room, they freak out and they go in there and they attack H. They take him down to stop him from, hurting these innocent children. And yes, they are innocent, especially since the wife has already been murdered by H. And they were even and H. Sorry, and Yusuf and his wife were estranged. They weren't even together anymore. But it's yeah. And one of the things that is important to understand prior to him going in the room with the children is that H tells Brody, "You're the only one that can stop me. If you tell me to stop, I will stop. Anybody else? No. But if you tell me," why me? She says, because he references the fact that she's been trying to take the moral high ground in terms of the individual as opposed to the 10 million. She's his counterpoint, and he respects her for that position because he's not happy about what he's doing. I mean, later on like I said, later on in the movie, after the scene with the kids, I think it is, he's crying. He's breaking down in the bathroom. And so they go in there and they attack him and they're beating him up and they take him out of the room and they're yelling at him and so on and so forth. And so, and Yusuf isn't in the room. See, what happened was Yusuf was in this room that had been built specifically for observation and for torture and stuff, and easy to clean up because it's got tiles and all that. And I'm sure it all would be torn out of that place after it was done. And so he's wheeled out of the room. And as he's being wheeled out to look at the observation windows, his children are being walked into the room. And so the kids go in there, Yusuf goes in there, H goes in there, and then the lights go out. And they're demanding, tell us the addresses. And you can't see for a while what's happening in the room. And then there's enough light that you can see Yusuf slowly kind of tying the children, although it's really vague as to what exactly he's really doing, because it kind of looks like he just takes these long strips of something and then just kind of lays it on their legs, but you can't really see their whole body. They're sitting on a table, and it's really hard to tell what actually is happening. So it could have been faked. So and then we fast forward back to that 20 minutes thing. When he announces that he's going to torture the kids, they use a shotgun to shoot out the lock because he's locked himself in there with the kids, and they go in there, beat him, drag him out, and she says, "Stop." Brody says, "Stop." He says, "Okay, I'm done." So then he pulls out his switchblade and he removes all the bonds from Yusuf. And so Yusuf tries, he's trying to get up and walk, and he's staggering and stuff like that. And the CIA guy that's leading the whole operation is like, "You can't do that. You've got to finish your job. We got to find the fourth bomb," because he's finally admitted that the fourth bomb exists. And H is like, "No, he's free. She told me to let him go, so I'm letting him go." And so the CIA operative has a gun pointed at him, and so suddenly, with a burst of strength, somehow Yusuf slams into him and takes his gun away. And he said, he's got his gun pointed at him, and everybody's pointing their guns at him, but they can't shoot him because they need him to find the fourth bomb. And so he's safe. He knows they're not going to shoot him. And so finally he lowers his gun and he says, "Take care of my children," and he blows his brains out. So then it's like, and so you're like, okay, what happens with the bombs? Because we don't hear about the other 3 bombs. There's not enough time for that 20 minutes to elapse. It's been like maybe 5 minutes, maybe probably less, since the 20-minute time frame was announced. And it probably would have, depending on where those bombs were located, it could have been much longer. Like if those bombs were located in a busy area where the traffic was really bad, it could have taken a lot longer to verify that the bomb was there, especially since they have to go in carefully so they don't accidentally trigger a bomb. We could be talking about an hour or more before they would have been able to verify it. Um, so you're thinking, okay, what the F is going on? So then we see Brody once more putting on the mantle of the individual rights triumph over the 10 million. And she goes to the kids who have been pulled out of the room and the girl's crying. The boy, for some reason, isn't really crying very much. It seems like he's kind of gotten over it, even though, and we don't know what Yusuf said to the children. And my guess is Yusuf actually had no intention of torturing the kids, and that he was just setting it up to make it look like that to get the rest of the information. Sorry, H wasn't going to torture the kids, to force Yusuf to reveal the 4th location. That's my guess. But in another, what I consider to be a poor script decision, he doesn't tell the other people in the room, I'm not really going to torture them. You have to trust me. I'm not going to hurt them. He does say this, but he doesn't say, I'm going to convince Yusuf that I will. He doesn't warn them ahead of time. And that is why it fails in the end. Because he does not clearly communicate. Here's a man who has demonstrated to everybody in the room that he will go to any lengths to save those 10 million people. And then he forgets to make it clear to everybody. If necessary, I'm going to convince Yusuf that I will torture his children. But I'm not going to. Play along with me because there's a 4th bomb. He doesn't do that. And that, to me, is very telling of the agenda of the script writer and the director and the producer and so on is not in alignment with making a movie that really stands out. We don't have to have the climax where the bombs are discovered, but we do have to have this moral resolution where one life is not worth 10 million or even 3 lives for that matter. But I don't believe that H would have actually killed those or hurt those children. I believe he would have just slowly gone through the motions while talking nicely to the children in the room so that Yusuf couldn't hear what he was saying. And that maybe that's the reason why the brother, the little boy, wasn't really crying. And the little girl, who's younger, it seems, was crying because she was still scared. They're in a dark room. But I believe, based on what I do know about H's character, that he was never going to actually hurt the children like he said he wouldn't. Unfortunately, everybody flips from let's save 10 million people to let's save the 2 children. So to me, I believe H is a very intelligent person. He understands human nature very well. And as somebody who really understands human nature, he would know that there was no way they would allow him to torture those kids, especially after killing their mother, Yusuf's wife. And he should make it extremely clear to everybody in the room that he won't, but he will pretend to get the extra information, the 4th bomb, which he should have admitted earlier on in the movie, which is another mistake. Yes, it adds extra drama to the movie because you think, oh, we found the bombs, and oh no, we don't have all the bombs. In fact, we never find out about that because the movie stops as Brody is walking out of the school, the black site, with the 2 children. She's got the girl in her arm, and she's got the boy hold by hand. But when she gets outside, they're both on the ground. And that's where the movie stops. So you never find out what happened with the bombs. You never find out if there really were 3 or 4 nuclear bombs, because that's not the point of the movie. The point of the movie is shifting morality. The point of the movie is, which is more important, one life or millions of lives? It's not about human rights anymore. It's about life itself. And in that respect, this movie is very important, because often when we see one poor person being hurt, we forget that maybe this loss of one life or harm to one life will save many lives. Now, please do not misunderstand me. I do not advocate torture. I do not believe in torture. There is ample evidence that torture rarely results in useful information, especially not violent torture where they'll say anything for the pain to stop. But throughout the whole interaction in this torture chamber, torture scenario, Yusuf is always 5 steps ahead of everybody else. He's ahead of even H, because he holds the cards. He set it up. He planned it out, because he knew how the CIA behaves. He knew how the military behaves. He knew how the FBI behaves from his prior career. So he was able to plot it all out and always be 1 step ahead, although I think he did not expect H to kill his wife. I didn't expect it. That one really caught me off guard. And so I think that the saddest part of this film is that H was right. Brody was right. Yusuf was right. They were all standing up for morals that many of us believe in, right? We should not be committing murder around the world in the name of the ultra-rich elitists who have no morals. We should not be torturing. We should not let 10 million people die. I think most of us agree on those 3 principles. But when you take those when you take those morals and you put them into a situation where they're conflicting with each other, it creates a lot of tension, a lot of confusion, a lot of emotions. And I think that is the beauty of this film, setting aside all the mistakes that are made. So, is it a great film? No. The script screws it up. Or maybe it was the director or the producer. I don't know. Whoever made those decisions that I've discussed, you could have done better. It would have been much better for there to be a tripwire or some kind of like a sensitive plate or something that would have triggered that bomb than to have that photograph. And so on and so forth. So, but the message of the film is that morality is a contextual thing. And when we have morals that in the right circumstances conflict with each other, all those moral positions can exist with a degree of veracity and yet conflict with each other. And then you have to prioritize. So which is more important? Because eventually Yusuf does tell his demands, and they're very reasonable demands. They're demands that were geared at promoting peace, getting America to stop engaging in black ops all over the world, and so on and so forth. And yet, it's as if, well, we're not going to do that. It's like within less than a minute of the demands being given, the discussion over whether they're going to do them or not is just thrown out the window. And to me, that is probably the worst mistake in the film, because they glossed over the resolution point for the sake of continuing the tension. Because throughout the movie, everybody's like, what are his demands? What are his demands? What are his demands? And they finally get the demands, and the demands are incredibly reasonable. And Brody even points out, or somebody points out, I think it was Brody, that he's asked us for these things, but he didn't ask us to televise them or anything like that. He didn't ask that they actually happen. Maybe it was not. It was. I think it actually was H's handler that says that, Charles Thompson or whatever his name is. He's a famous actor, but he's pretty much on the periphery almost all the time. But he's there a lot once H becomes involved. So it's like, really? You're gonna screw up this film that way? You should have written it differently. So yeah, but in terms of addressing the various moral positions you can take within the various characters, you've got the military people who will have to abide by military law, but they could have refused. The colonel could have walked off the site, because under military law, if you know something's illegal, you have the authority and the duty to refuse to comply. Now, you may end up being thrown in the brig for doing it, but you have the right and the responsibility to refuse to comply. And none of them did. Because more than that, no matter that the military law says that, the military code of justice or whatever it's called, soldiers are trained to unquestioningly obey their superiors. And that applies to the colonel. The general said, you can't leave. You're in charge. And that's reiterated later in the movie. And yet none of them, not even the general, well, the general leaves. He refuses to take part in it further, even though he has been part of the CIA-style torture that the first guy was doing. He is, he leaves. So it really, I can't blame the characters playing the soldiers, even the colonel, because they've been trained, they've been brainwashed, indoctrinated, if you will, if you prefer, to comply, no matter what, even though that violates the military code of justice. USMCJ? No. I forgot what it's called. So that is my review and analysis of this movie. I'd like to see something else like this, but that's been done much better, because I think that the script really kind of undermines the actors and actresses. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day.
Thanks for watching. I need to ask for your help. On December 11th, 2024, Amazon fired me under false pretenses, and the 17th, I had surgery for the injury that occurred at Amazon that Amazon and Sedgwick refused to take responsibility for. So it's coming out of my pocket and my insurance company's pocket. That means I'm unemployed, and I will not be getting short-term disability from Amazon or from Sedgwick. So my financial situation is a bit of a problem right now. If you would like to help me, there are some things you can do. Number one, you can like, subscribe, share, comment, and turn on notifications on my channels. Number two, if you'd like to give a one-time donation, and please don't do this if you can't afford it, you can, on the Glenn's Fast Reviews channel, do a super thanks. Number three, if you would like to help me on a monthly basis, you can become a member on Glenn's Fast Reviews, or you can go to patreon.com/GLENNMII and become a member there. Thank you so much for your support.